In 2021, author Clint Smith published his acclaimed best-selling book, How the Word is Passed. The book tells the story of Smith's visits to historical sites around the world and here at home, exploring the legacy of slavery to better understand our country's history and its present. Now the book has been adapted for young readers by Sonja Cherry-Paul. The adaptation comes at a time of ongoing debate about what history should be taught in schools and how. But Smith, a poet and writer for The Atlantic, says we must understand America fully by looking at all of our history. And Clint Smith joins us now. Welcome.
It's good to be here.
I was up so late, I could not put this down, this adaptation for young readers. It's a very easy read. It goes very fast. When you first released this book, it was at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement. Yep. We're in a very different moment right now. How do you hope or think your book will be received in this moment that we're in?
Yeah, the book came out in 2021, which was a very different moment. But ultimately, America is a place that has provided unparalleled, unimaginable opportunities for millions of people across generations in ways that their own ancestors could have never imagined. And it's also done so at the direct expense of millions and millions of other people who have been intergenerationally subjugated and oppressed. And both of those things are the story of America. You have to hold both of those realities alongside one another. The same way you have to hold Jefferson as someone who enslaved over 600 people, as well as Jefferson, who wrote one of the most important documents in the history of the Western world. And so I very much argue in the book that we don't have to run from or tell a black and white story of America, but that we can recognize America as a complex place with a complex history. And in order to understand the world we live in today, we have to understand and sit with and confront those complexities directly.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, and it's not that hard, actually, and yet at the school level, it seems like people have made it impossible. There is no way that people can agree to talk about our past. You haven't reviewed every curriculum at every school, but as a general piece of advice, if you were advising school districts, how would you say they should approach the topic of slavery?
I think that part of what we have to help young people recognize is that slavery was an enormous factor in shaping the history of this country and the country that we live in today. And part of what you need to understand is that it wasn't that long ago. Like, my grandfather's grandfather was enslaved. The woman who opened the National Museum of African American History and Culture in 2016 alongside the Obama family was a woman named Ruth Bonner. And she was the daughter of a person who was born into slavery. So when I first started writing this book, I think I went to these different sites to get a sense of our collective physical proximity to this history, but part of what I discovered was our temporal proximity to this history, how this history we tell ourselves was a long time ago just wasn't that long ago at all.
It really wasn't. I always think about my son Teddy. When my mom was his age, it was Brown v. Board of Education and the National Guard clearing the way for schools.
You know what really got me in your book? You go to Monticello, you go to the Whitney plantation in Louisiana, you're from New Orleans, and you enter a slave cabin that's not a replica. Like, I've been in a replica.
Yeah.
You enter a slave cabin that still stands, and then you write that the descendants of the slaves that worked that land were still living in that cabin until 1975.
Yeah.
That hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
That is the proximity right there.
And there's a singular power, I think, in putting your body in the place where history happened. And the thing I hope that young people and their parents and teachers come from this book with is that you don't have to necessarily go to the places that I went. But that all over this country, the scars of slavery are etched into the landscape all over this country. Here in New York City, right, which was the second largest slave port in the country after Charleston, South Carolina at one point.
Really?
Yes, and so the Statue of Liberty in New York City was actually originally created to be a celebration of emancipation, from a celebration of the abolition of slavery in 1865, but they changed the meaning because it was too fractious right after the Civil War. The actual design, the original design of the Statue of Liberty had chains in Lady Liberty's hand to represent the abolition of slavery, and they eventually took it out because they needed the support of the South.
See, I was just taught that it was a gift from France, right? Not the whole thing. You write for The Atlantic this article, actually slavery was very bad. Do you ever get tired of trying to convince people of this?
I think that what I want people to know is that it is deeply important to understand the history of slavery, because understanding the history of slavery helps us understand the contemporary landscape of inequality today. I simultaneously want them to know that the experience of Black Americans in this country is not singularly defined by the history of slavery. It is far more expansive than that. It is far more joyous than that. It is far more diverse than that. The experience of immigrant, the Black diaspora, Black immigrants, And so I want the sort of, again, that duality, that both-andedness to be a part of the story. We shouldn't run from the realities of slavery, but we should also recognize that there's more to the story than just that.
Absolutely. Clint Smith, thank you very much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate you coming back.